All right, Warriors of National Guard recruiting. Today we have Staff Sergeant Zelepugas from the great state of Indiana. And we're just going to talk about what you do to be successful. But what I always like to start off with is just tell us your National Guard story and how you arrived at recruiting.
Thank you for having me. I'm laughing because it's a little different. It's actually very different. So I started out in the Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps in 2008, 2009. I was active duty for just right at about 9 years. I am originally from Colorado, so I get asked all the time, when I kind of tell my people my story, when I have an applicant in front of me, where are you from? Or I tell them I'm from Colorado. They always ask, like, well, why did you come to Indiana? Because Indiana isn't, the most exciting state. I get it. So I am here by way of the Marine Corps. When I was coming off of active duty, we decided to come here to Indiana because my father-in-law retired out of DFAS. And we got the DFAS center like literally right in my backyard, which is where our MEPS is. So he decided to stay where we were stationed in Quantico, Virginia. So, when you transition out of active duty, you basically get to pick where you want to go. And then obviously your stuff gets sent there, obviously 2 or 3 weeks later. But we all know how that works. I think we've all been there, or most of us anyways. So yeah, that's why I'm here in Indiana. What I did in the Marine Corps, I was logistics, basically the equivalent of essentially a 92 Alpha for the Marine Corps, obviously. And then when I deployed to Afghanistan in 2010, I saw a different side of the Marine Corps that I didn't really know existed. I didn't know much about it, and it was aviation. So when I got back from Afghanistan, it was that point in time in my first career, or my first enlistment, I think, that we've all wrestled with is, do I stay in? Do I get out? What do I do? I knew I wanted to stay in. I just didn't want to do my job anymore because it was boring. I wanted to work with my hands. That's where I feel like I really excel. This is getting annoying. So when I got back, I did what's called a lateral move, or the equivalent of a reclass for the Army. And I reclassed into being a crew chief on what are known as V-22 Ospreys. So, I was flying on the aircraft, I was doing maintenance, and I was doing a ton of other things too. And then eventually I worked my way into getting a top secret security clearance. I flew on a different aircraft known as the VH-60. It's a fancy version of the Black Hawk, specifically for the President of the United States. So I was known as a Marine One crew chief. I was at the Presidential Helicopter Squadron for Obama and the transition into President Trump. I flew President Trump on many occasions, the First Lady, chiefs of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and tons of other, high-ranking VIPs. Very unique, very awesome experience. But ultimately, that's what drove me out of the Marine Corps, just because the op tempo was so high. Anytime you ever see the president out and about doing things, we are right there with him. I think right now he's in South Korea, and I know that my guys are over there right now, hanging out in a hangar somewhere in the heat. And that's what I used to do. So just like you and me are Zooming right now, this is how I rose my family. I was sick of it, and I needed something else. I needed a change. I needed to be home with them, and I wanted to be with my family and raise them as any normal person should. So I applied to be like a National Guard tech at an air station here in Shelbyville, Indiana. And I was just hoping to work on 60s and be like a Black Hawk mechanic. As a tech, I didn't really know what that meant, but basically the phone got passed from one person to another, to another, to another. Everybody kind of heard my story and maybe figured I might be a good fit as a recruiter. I didn't know that the National Guard had recruiters with the whole, part-time, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer. And I didn't know anything about AGR. I didn't know anything about ADOS. So I had that all explained to me. It sounded great. And here I am today, essentially. So unfortunately, I don't have a traditional National Guard story. all my National Guard experience and National Guard knowledge is solely based off of my own research. Thank God there's guys out there like Sergeant First Class Schwartz. I think I religiously watched his videos on a daily basis to get a feel of, hey, what are the phases like at basic training? Because I didn't go to that. So I needed to know what I was telling my people, and I needed to know that it was the right stuff because I did not go through those experiences.
Well, that's it. That's an amazing story. One thing that I just know in my experience in recruiting and leading recruiters, I always tell leadership this, that I've never had a Marine fail me in recruiting. They're always successful. And it doesn't matter what job they had. If they're a Marine Corps recruiter, they're usually awesome. But if just getting a Marine, because I think doing what you're supposed to do is a higher value for Marines. That's just my opinion. So if your boss says, go talk to 20 people, you're not going to come back and say, I gave it the old college try and I got 15. It's going to be 20. So you jumped right into recruiting and the recruiting opportunity. How long have you been at it?
Going on a little over 4 years now. I literally EAS'd from the Marine Corps January 21st of 2018. And I think that was a Friday. The 24th or the 23rd, I was at MEPS enlisting to the National Guard. So I wanted it to be as seamless as possible because I have a family, I have responsibilities and bills, just, like everybody else. So I couldn't afford to just like hang out as a traditional soldier and hopefully something, like presented itself. I came into the National Guard with the full intention of being an ADOS/AGR recruiter.
Awesome. So having been at it for a period of time, what have you learned about recruiting from when you first started to now? Because the pandemic must have started like pretty close to when you were becoming AGR, I would imagine.
No, actually, I came AGR very quickly. I think I was on ADOS for maybe a month. And then I went on my AGR board and immediately was an AGR recruiter. But yeah, I would say so March 2020, it was about 2 years after I started recruiting.
Okay. And so you really caught my attention with kind of an exchange that happened on the recruiting forum. And I think it's a good thing to share because right now you're over 20 contracts for the year, right?
Yes.
And so I just saw your comment. That's what I reached out to.
Right.
Saw your comment. But I believe the context is someone who was asking what is working right now or something like that. And your response was what?
Basically just, okay, it was specifically, they asked, given the current climate of like how everything is right now, what is working for you guys? And I mean, really in a nutshell, I said, just be resilient and do your job. I wasn't really trying to be like smart about it. I wasn't trying to offend anybody. If the shoe fits, hey, that's not my problem. But it's important. Like we need to understand that just because things are probably as hard as they may have ever been in recruiting, we're in an unprecedented time right now where we have had to do things and had to restructure things and had to react to things that we've never had to deal with in the past. 10, 15 years ago, they didn't have to deal with Emerald or Genesis or the pandemic. Like all this has happened in such a short time. It's forced us to either be resilient and continue pushing forward, or, I mean, maybe this just isn't for you and moving on to something else. It's really kind of pulled out who is willing to, just roll with the punches. You have no other choice. We don't have the option of, well, maybe at this applicant, I won't do Genesis, or, maybe I can just forget about the pandemic and not worry about how that impacted how people feel, think, see, and look at the military, and how that might impact their decision to want to join. Like we have to deal with these things and they're not going away. So either you deal with them and be proactive, or you continue to just be reactive and just throw your hands up and just give up?
Well, and I want to be a little bit more specific, and I'm going from memory here. I thought you said like three things.
I did, yes.
First, there's not going to be emission reduction. I
Right.
realized there wasn't going to be emission reduction. Second, I decided to stop complaining about Genesis. And then I started recruiting. That's what I remember of it. I might be wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
You're spot on. Yes, correct.
And so the first part of just understanding that when you get a mission from the Army, you know, the National Guard, every recruiter is going to have a mission, that that's the task. And the conditions and standards may change, but the task is going to stay the same. And the third thing you said, I think, is really important too, because this year in particular, across the country, we've really forgotten that to do recruiting, doing recruiting. Like so many people want to, they would want you to say, what's the one thing that's working? Now I'm going to take a guess here. There's not one thing that always works, but doing everything always works. And you can expand on that if you'd like, but there isn't a secret sauce. That would be my perspective. What would you say? Like, you got over 20 enlistments, so there's probably a lot of ways you found people.
So given everything that we've had to adjust to, this is definitely one of my lighter years, but I think that's, I mean, I'm not going to say that's understandable. I'm just going to say, like, we have to change things. And again, everything else is going to change with it. But when I got 32, I look at this whole thing that we do, which is called recruiting, as a chess game. If anybody out there knows really anything about chess, if you're good at chess, you're not looking at just like the one move that you can make right here, right now. You're looking at the pieces that are on the board. And if I move this one thing, how is my opponent going to make their move? And what are they going to do? And how am I going to react to that? Not only that, but you have to think 5 or 10 moves ahead of that to actually win the game. So recruiting is a lot like a game of chess. And a lot of people have heard me say this, at least that's just my perspective. You have to do a lot of backwards planning. Every applicant is going to have just some little thing that's just a little bit different about them. And I know that I'm kind of beating a dead horse. I'm sorry about that. But looking at what we do as a chess game has really helped me understand the planning process and getting everybody across the finish line in an efficient manner and with what they're happy with as well. Because for me, that's most important. Like, I'm not just going to shove somebody through the process and hopefully they're happy with what 2 options I presented them. Like, I want them to cross the finish line knowing that they did something that's right for them and that they're happy with it. So perspective, chess game, that's how I run my business.
So you've enlisted over 30 in the past in a FY.
Yes.
So this year, are you finding to get to that where you're at right now? Where are you at right now?
On mission?
Yeah.
I think I'm at right at about 20. But our excuse me, our RY is July to July.
Yeah.
So it's different than the majority of the country.
Yeah, you're coming to the finish line here. But
Correct.
have you found that this year it just takes more people to get to the 20?
I can be honest, right?
Yeah, I hope.
So I think that I when I started, I heard this a lot from the people who were successful. It's not exactly always quantity. You know, if you have perfected your craft in such a way that, hey, if you really can only talk to 3 people in a month and 2 of those 3 join because you know exactly what you're doing, you can plan properly, you know what you're talking about. If somebody needs a moral waiver, somebody needs a medical waiver, like, you don't shy away from that stuff. Maybe that's all that you need. Have I had my months where I'm talking to hundreds of people? Absolutely. But I have found that later on, as I've gone down this road and progressed through, the badges and experience and everything, you don't always need to send out 10,000 emails a day. You don't always need to cold call 150 people in the evening. You don't need to send out 500 text messages to your entire, senior body. It just depends on the individual recruiter. I don't need to, at this point in my recruiting career, like actually in the streets, need to spend that much time talking to that many people because I've taken care of my warriors and my soldiers. They are now taking care of me and feeding me their friends that might be interested in joining. So that also helps, fuel my funnel as well.
Well, I did think,
and I'm just being honest.
Yeah, that's a good message for a newer recruiter. You can't just snap your fingers and say, well, I got 120 people I've enlisted. That takes a minute in order to do that. But when you get a couple FYs under your belt, you got 20, then you got 40, you got you and 40 other people looking for someone for you. And over time, they get honed in on the kinds of people. Their orbit are going to be the kinds of people that can probably get in.
Right.
Their friends and their network and all that. So that's not a shocking thing to me to hear that, well, it's less. But when you're a new kid, it's a totally different ballgame. You haven't enlisted anyone yet.
Right.
So that's
right. You have to build that foundation.
But knowing what you know now, I think, and I'm just guessing at this because this is the first time we're ever talking, is you're probably pretty quick to get someone identified that can get enlisted and someone that can't get enlisted after this much time recruiting.
I have yes. The answer is yes, absolutely. Now, I am not the approval authority for, things that I cannot control, but yes, to answer your general question, you are correct.
And that is like, that's the time management part of it.
Yes.
After a period of time, you can start doing the math and say, well, I always say this, someone that gets a 17 on the ASVAB is not just going to be a 31 down the trail here. They've had many years of education. People that are grossly overweight are not just going to drop that weight, have a life change. We should be focusing on individuals that when we're looking at them, we're talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
If we get them to the yes column, they're going to get in the guard.
Yes.
It's kind of an overlooked thing because when you're a new recruiter, you want to talk to anybody that will talk to you.
Absolutely. And you think hey, I got somebody. And then you really start asking the questions like, maybe put them in your back pocket and move on to somebody else.
I want to explore something else because you brought it up. Is most people don't know like history of recruiting. I've been around for a minute. So it would be shocking for people to understand that, in the past, before 2010, we had an FY where we couldn't enlist anyone that got under 50.
Wow.
And in my state, because the National Guard was going to shrink at that point in time. I can't remember what FY it was, but
okay.
We're going to shrink. So everybody had to get a 50. And in my state, no moral waivers.
Wow.
And so people have this perspective, and it's like what we do with like your boot camp for the Marine Corps. I bet you if you talk to a Marine from 15 years before you served, like, we were serious about boot camp then. What you went through, that was pretty easy. And we have that perspective of,
right. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, like what I'm doing, it's the hardest time for me doing it. And I think it is very difficult right now, but I also think about this perspective. Everybody walks around with one of these, and I got into recruiting in 2004. People didn't have smartphones. Facebook didn't exist yet. Twitter didn't exist yet. Instagram didn't exist yet. our marketing as a National Guard was nothing national. The swag items were a box of pencils, and people will say, well, this isn't true, but it is true. There were periods of time when we had to sign for pencils. You got like 200 pencils, right? Or
yeah.
when the big swag item was not an iPod, it was an MP3 player, and every recruiter got like one to give to a VIP or a COI, and that person we gave it to had to sign for it. So it's like you didn't keep it. So I mentioned that because there's always going to be new challenges, and you don't get to pick your recruiting time. You just happen to be in this recruiting time. So that's just kind of commentary. I'm curious about what is your secret sauce, do you think? What makes you a successful recruiter?
You said it, and I know for a fact you've talked about this in your other podcasts, but it's as simple as time management. That's my secret sauce. That's where I live. That's my zone. If I don't mean to sound, bureaucratic or political or what everybody else is being told to do, but like when I'm at work, I'm working. I don't sit at my desk and waste time. If I'm not doing at least 2 or 3 things or thinking about what I'm going to do in the next couple of days, which is tacking on another 2 or 3 or 4 more tasks onto my workload that day, I feel wrong. I feel like I'm not, earning my paycheck that day. So time management of making the most use of my time and being as effective as possible with that time, with the time I'm given on a daily basis, that is where I live. And I brought that experience over from what I did in the Marine Corps. And that's kind of why I went on so much about that, is because at one point in time, I was managing 24 aircraft. I was managing the maintenance. I was managing their flight hours. I was managing, what tasks need to be done on multi-million-dollar aircraft on a daily basis. Sending aircraft overseas, sending aircraft to a different state. Like if I could manage that, I can easily manage applicants and paperwork. So I took some of those skills that I gained and that work ethic over to National Guard recruiting. And again, it's all about time management and time effectiveness. So my secret sauce is having time management. You have to.
Well, I'm curious because you mentioned it earlier that you wanted to have the opportunity to spend more time with your family. That's why you came over to the Guard and you found yourself in recruiting. But that is one of the complaints recruiters have, is the job takes up too much of your time. So for you, when you're managing that time, what is your objective in a day and in a week?
My objective on a daily basis is to get my work started as early as possible, get it done as early as possible, and to be home to help coach my son's lacrosse team at 1700. I'm just being real. A lot of people are not going to like this, but that's me, and I've done pretty well. I can probably count on my 2 hands how many times I've been at the office past 1900. And that's all because of my time management skills. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything like that. We all have our own way of going about doing things. Could I have probably enlisted 20 or 30 or 50 more people working into the evening? Absolutely. But my time with my family is extremely important to me. Being a family man, being a father, and being a husband is very, very, important and in the forefront of my mind and how I go about doing what I do. So I'm literally working every day just to get home as fast as I can so I can be with them, because I had so much time taken away from me.
Well, that's important on a value system, that I don't think you need to work 12 hours a day recruiting, but I'm 100% confident that you can't just work 2 hours a day. And you got to
No way.
You got to do real work when you're working. And one of the things I think recruiters, wherever they're at, in their career can take from that is, okay, this is something else I want to be doing, but the work's got to come first.
Prioritizing.
Yeah, it's just got to get done. And if you have a benchmark measure, you know, and when you meet that objective every day, legitimately, and only you know, right? Because your boss is not in your office watching every minute of your work. And that's where I think we fall off a little bit. We're not disciplined enough to say, this is really what I got, what I have to get done. And
Because like you said, our bosses aren't in our offices every day. Like, you have to be driven enough to do what needs to get done that day on your own, because somebody's not there giving you your tasks for the day like regular military is. Like, it's easy to show up to work and have somebody tell you, hey, this needs to get done today, get it done, versus you coming into work and having your own plan, running your own business, running your own time, and managing your own space. It's a lot harder to do that, especially for somebody new who may only have 4 or 5 years in the Guard at that point. Like, I can understand that that's very difficult for younger individuals in the military.
but what everyone should know is, if you don't manage your time, someone else will.
Yes, they will.
So, I mean, that is the motivation factor there. So you mentioned managing your time and work when you're working. I'm curious, because you guys are on an RY, so you go from July to June. When you come into the year, what is your objective on when you want to have that mission complete?
I've had it done as early as December in the past, but that was pre-COVID, and pre everything else that we're having to deal with right now. But I don't know if I have a date in mind. Obviously, the date is 30 June. That's obvious. But outside of, I do not want to spend the entire year, you know, do we have the whole year? Yes. Me personally, I do not want to spend the whole year worrying about, where's the next one going to come from. Getting out in front for me has always been very, very important. Having a strong first quarter. And I'm not saying this just so I can be lazy. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it so I can really focus in getting people what exactly it is that they want, and really giving them my time that I know that they deserve, because that in turn makes my job easier. So like this year, I think it was early March. It has slowly been kind of getting further and further out. But again, that's because of, timelines have increased with contact to contract. It's not an excuse, but no, I definitely want to be done with mission, in the spring for sure. I do not want to be close to the end of the recruiting year and still worrying about things.
Well, that's kind of just a law of recruiting. It's like the end of the month, right? Like,
you don't want to do that.
At the end of the month, when you really need something to happen, it's not going to happen. At the end of the FY, when you need one more and you only got one player in the game, it ain't looking good for the home team at that point in time.
Right.
And I think you probably assess that when you're ahead, you have different behaviors.
So that was something I wanted to say. I forgot about it, but yeah, you're 100% correct. Less stress, less you're more positive. You look good, you feel good, you do good. Something I preach to my kids in lacrosse, but like, it's true, because if you are able to come into work with a positive mental attitude because things are good, and hey, this is recruiting, it's hills and valleys, right? Even the best recruiters have bad days and bad months, but yeah, if you were just able to not have to stress about the basics, you can worry about the other cool things that you can do in this job. Like, I know it sounds stupid and simple, but putting in a marketing request to hand out some cool RPI to your existing soldiers and warriors in hopes that they give you leads. It's kind of like real estate or the stock market. I hate to put it in context of monetary value, but the more passive income you can have as a recruiter by people working for you, again, that's just less stress that's on your plate.
Yeah, that is traditionally the number one source of enlistments is our referrals. I mean, but you gotta get started in the business to have that happen.
Correct. And that's hard.
So there's a lot of good stuff there. You're kind of preaching, my belief system, but we got a lot of recruiters out there. They're in a bad spot. Most of the country is on a traditional FY. So they're there's 5 months to go after this month. June, July, August, September, 4 months to go after this month.
Mhm.
And they're thinking, well, it don't look good for me. It's about 80 some MEPS days to go in this year. So what would be some advice to them that you would give with, you got 4 months to go to make this sucker happen? What should they do?
Well, like I said in that Facebook post, no one's gonna feel sorry for you. Don't expect handouts. Don't expect anything to get easier. We're having to do a lot more with a lot less nowadays. Once you can just accept that is now recruiting's new normal, I think your life will be a little bit easier. And it's all about perspective. And I get it. It's easier for me to sit here and say that because I do have an established market and I do have, the experience to back that up. Because as a new recruiter, like, this job is extremely daunting. I was super scared. I was scared of failure. I was scared of getting fired, which would have ended up affecting my family. Like, I had a lot to lose, which also I think kind of drove me to do things the way I did. But you having that much time left in the year, use your time effectively, use it wisely. Don't come in the office and sit on your phone or watch TV on the office TV. Like, come in and do work. Yeah, BS with the boys, and that's fun. That's fine. Go get lunch with your office. But like, when you're at your desk, work. Focus on working. If someone else wants to sit there and talk all day, cool. Don't be that guy. Don't be that girl. Just try to focus on using these last remaining months as most effectively as you possibly can.
Well, and it's just a matter of time and repetition. So
That's it.
we've not only the Guard, but all branches of service have not reached the people that we can get enlisted. And so if you will look back at what DoD production was pre-pandemic, we're not even close to being back to that. And the people didn't disappear.
No.
Right? So the mechanisms that have kept us from being in front of those people, they're kind of disappearing. And if someone can get ahead on the front end of the FY, someone can catch up on the back end of an FY. So it is possible to do. It won't be possible, like you said. If you're complaining about it, it's not possible. If you're not doing work, it's not possible. But if you get to work, you can get some people in the Guard, and those people will know some people, and those people
Right.
will know some people. And I don't think it's too late for anybody. That would just be my perspective. Kind of winding her down here a little bit. It seems to me like you plan to have a career in recruiting.
Correct.
And so I would say, what would be your words of wisdom to the recruiters out there of how you can, because you seem like you're enjoying the job and thinking about a career. So what would be your words of wisdom? How can you get to the place that you're at?
I mean, you did kind of sort of take the words out of my mouth. I didn't think that I was going to enjoy this as much as I do. I look at this as like, I'm like a company in Marine Corps terms. I'm like a company gunny, or I'm like a platoon sergeant. I have my applicants, I have my warriors, I have my soldiers. Like, I still contact them on a daily basis, or not a daily basis, but every now and again. They reach out to me when they have questions. So I look at it as like, I have the opportunity and I have the, I'm trying to find the word. It, I get to lead these people. I get to mentor these people. That's like, that's an honor to be able to have that ability to do that and affect the way that they think, affect maybe the moves they make in their life. They're asking for my advice. Like, I think that that's pretty awesome. Once I got to that point, I then realized, like, wait a second, I actually do really like doing this. I like going to the RSD and I like putting people in formation and I like conducting PT. Like, I like all those things that are familiar to me on the active duty side, and I still get to do those things. And guess what? All of my warriors and soldiers, they like it too. Um, I guess my advice is try to find your way to enjoy this, because once you start enjoying it, everything else will just easily fall into place. Getting there is a mountain. It can be a mountain, but once you do get there, there is a very, very nice gradual slope to slide down until you retire. And I mean that in a very positive way. So
Well, it's interesting how you say that, because what you're talking about is opportunity.
yes,
Right? Like, we have the opportunity to change lives. We have the opportunity to impact young people. When things are tough, you forget about the opportunity. You just do. But we got a really good thing here in the National Guard. And it's for a whole bunch of people. It's not for a lot of people too, but it's for, and I don't know any recruiter that doesn't feel really good on enlistment day.
oh, even
Right?
even 100 down, 100. I don't care who you are. Even me, like, I still get the heebie-jeebies. I still get nervous. And you know what? When they come out of medical and it's all ones, I still get like super happy for them. Obviously, yes, it makes our lives as recruiters easier as well, because we have what we need to do.
Yeah.
But that feeling will never leave my body.
Yeah, that's a good spot to leave it. It's like, I like the way you think. I like the performance that you're delivering. It's a good message to recruiters. Let's think about how good it feels to get someone enlisted, for them, for you, for everybody in the organization. If we had more of that thought process, it'd be easier to do a little bit more work. It'd be easier to ignore some of the challenges that we have, because we can't make them go away.
Right.
So I really appreciate you doing this. I hope to see you at an MRE event down the trail here. But keep on doing what you're doing. I really appreciate it. And if you know of any other Marines, I'm sure the National Guard could use them.
They can, and I do. So thank you for having me.
Awesome.